Welcome back to the weekly news roundup, and this is the Linuxy edition of the newsy. So I hope you guys had a wonderful week. Of course, you can catch these shows recorded live Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to catch the show live and participate in all of the in-between segment nonsense that goes on around here and all the crazy other updates. Sometimes the updates only get done here, which I should probably do a better job of updating people other places as well. But, you know, we'll get into that later. Let's go ahead and get into the news now. First up, we have Ubuntu brings an absolutely abomination of a feature to the whole of the desktop. Of course, it is fortunately optional. This is picture-in-picture. Picture-in-picture should be burnt with fire. Like, when I forgotten to turn off picture-in-picture and I'm on a YouTube page and then I click back and the YouTube video keeps playing and then it takes me back to the page, I'm like, I clicked back to turn the damn video off. I don't want picture-in-picture nonsense. Well, now Ubuntu is like, so people don't like this stuff? Great, let's jam it everywhere. Now, to be fair, it's not a default application. It's not even installed by default. It is an application that will work for Ubuntu or any GNOME-based application. So it's a GNOME-based application. And what it allows you to do is inside of GNOME is use any application as a picture-in-picture. So if you do like picture-in-picture stuff, it's useful feature for being able to have an always-on-top window playing, like, for example, a local movie. That's a good, useful application. Maybe you need to keep some small window open on top of other things. You don't want to have to fiddle around with that top type stuff. And so that being said, whatever the case happens to be. Okay, good. So with that, they are bringing this application. I'm making fun of it mostly because I hate picture-in-picture, but I recognize completely that is an absolute personal choice for people that love that feature. It is going to be installable, not just on Ubuntu, but on any GNOME-based application. So they have some neat uses for it, of course, if you need to keep certain things on top. Of course, if you're doing this type of stuff and it's looking like this and a bunch of staticky picture-on-picture, you may as well be running like a window manager instead. But hey, call this the window manager application. I like this application. Keep an HTOP running on top of things. You can monitor what's going on, maybe during a video edit or something. There's some neat applications. I will not be installing it on my personal builds anytime soon, but as all things, I love that there are options for people. So praise the Lord for options. Speaking of options, we do now have the fully 100% open source Libre kernel is available for the Linux kernel 6.8. So, of course, if you're unfamiliar with this project, it takes the Linux kernel and strips everything out that is not 100% freedom. And so the idea here is that a person can come in and if they really are that absolutely committed to 100% open source, no proprietary at all, you can install this on your distro and make sure that everything in that kernel is completely open source. So 6.8 has been released, and they talked here about just some of the technicals about a few of the things that were done, mostly fixing up and patching up some video cards and things, because of course they'll put some proprietary blobs in for the video drivers just to make sure things work well. So that is a good for people that happen to want that. Now, we did cover a full video featuring a more important feature of the brand new version of KeePass. That is, KeePassXC now supports passkeys. So any web-based application that you need to, or even something you can run inside of a progressive web app type thing, you can utilize passkeys through KeePassXC. That way, of course, you can back up your passkeys into your database. You can store them in your local backup files, and you can keep your passkeys away from the big tech companies. That is a absolutely amazing new feature KeePassXC rolled out in version 2.7.7. So that is good. You can check out that whole video. The other thing I mentioned in passing, we'll just mention here, it was good enough to include in the news, is we now support importing from 1Password and from Bitwarden. So you can go ahead and if you are using one of those two cloud-based applications and you're like, okay, I really got to move away, but man, I don't want to have to copy those passwords all over the place, you now have the ability to import from 1Password and Bitwarden's backup options. I know Bitwarden is open source, but I just don't want my passwords on any internet-based application for this very reason. And so that is what we see over here, is that, of course, they have some improvements on the TOTP. If you haven't caught that video I did maybe about, 6 months, a year ago, you can use KeePassXC for TOTP as well. So that, of course, that's using your like QR codes, the type of things you'd use Google Authenticator for. You can also do in KeePassXC. We have videos on that as well. They just have some updates from that. You can get the brand new version to support all these features by utilizing the Snap or the Flatpak version. Yay. So those are certainly options that you have. Of course, if you want it from the main repository, probably it's going to come from Arch or something like Fedora first. Who knows? Well, keep an eye on the version of KeePassXC if those are features that you happen to need. And be careful of regressions if you're moving your database passwords around. Make sure that nothing gets lost in the translation. Next up, we have another desktop getting ready for Wayland. Of course, that's LXQt is now 100% ready for Wayland. So the next version will be due out in the next month or two. With the LXQt 2.0 desktop series due in April 2024 will be 100% ready for Wayland. They are not, to my knowledge, dropping X yet. So it will still be an option, which is good. Of course, I was looking at Chaos for a video. I was hoping to do it tomorrow, but it's not happening. More on that later. But that one there, of course, they pushed the brand new version of Plasma 6. And once again, I could not full screen in Wayland on a VirtualBox. So actually, I think I was using GNOME boxes. So there are still a lot of bugs in Wayland. I am not ready for Wayland to completely replace everything. And but I absolutely support the other options. I absolutely support the development of Wayland. I just don't want to see Wayland completely removing X from other distributions because there are still a lot of bugs to work out. And realize it's not the main stuff that causes the drive and the people to not switch or to switch. It is what happens on the fringes. Linux just got to the point where the fringes work in nearly every case, and now we want to drop X, which made that work, and see a lot of weird regressions. So I am absolutely behind Wayland development. I just don't think we should be pushing it as Wayland-only options, as is happening in some places. And on to our final article in Linux news today. There was actually a case in France where a company violated the GPL and the company was compensated 500,000 euros and an additional 150,000 euros for moral damages. We need moral damages here in the United States. We need moral damages here. There are a few punitive type things. We call it punitive, but it's very rare to have a case where you can actually sue for punitive. But in this case here, this dealt with an application that had a GPL license. So they had infringed on Orange was the telecom provider, had infringed on Entervoorts Lasso. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. Software. I just need to say that like I'm kissing somebody, and that's how to do French, right? Isn't that right? Va 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 va. You know. Even the going to the bathroom sounds kind of sexy in France. Oui, oui. No. Okay. But that means, I'm sorry, guys. All right. So this company's a publisher of Lasso, a reference library in SML protocol, which is an open standard, which has the GPL license. This telecom used this application without making the source code available. So GPL allows you to sell it as long as you make the source code available for people as well. And they failed to do that. And in case of it, first it went to a lower court, and then an appeals court overturned that, and then it came back to the ultimate court case. Was this the appeals court, or was this? Yeah, the Court of Appeals is the one who issued on this. And they ruled that yes, the GPL is an actual enforceable contract. Violating the GPL will result, and they end up, the $500,000 came from divesting them of the profits that they made, plus an extra $150,000 for all of the extra nonsense that the people had to go through. So that, to me, is really good that we see a case here where the GPL is actually being enforced, which is a very beneficial thing for the open source community. With that, if you want to help support the channel, we do have Patreon. So Patreon is one of several different platforms that we use. Of course, we have our short story series coming up from these. You can also participate in the Thursday shows. And I realize it is the 15th today and the short story is not up. That is because I'm planning to do the audiobook tomorrow, and I want to put the short story and the audiobook up at the same time. And since I knew I was only going to be delayed one day, I held back on that. So hopefully by the time you're watching this on the edited version on Sunday, that should be on Patreon and the other supporter networks as well. So a fun new story is coming up called iDNA, and you enjoy it, I hope. And it is actually the first one of these short stories that is not necessarily family friendly. There are some interesting things. I just didn't know how to write a story with so impactful, but you can check those out over there on Patreon, patreon.com/TOMM, and that will help support all my different channels. With that, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.